Greetings, Dennis Fair, retired member of the Metropolitan Police Department, serving 29 years straight of uninterrupted service, retiring on June the 8th of 2019. Any type of commentary that I make is strictly my own opinion. I'm not affiliated with any law enforcement agency, and especially the Metropolitan Police Department. Wanted to discuss the gun violence that's actually just getting started. That may sound a little disheartening for those that are on the outside looking in, but there are a lot of shootings that are currently occurring, and the Connecticut Avenue one is one that made national news all over the United States. Unfortunately, there were like 10 shootings between Friday of the occurrence on Connecticut Avenue and Saturday. There were a total of 10 separate shootings. However, in most of these cases, different areas of the city are not going to get covered like the one on Connecticut Avenue. And there is a difference in coverage in violent crime depending on where it happens. Unfortunately, there's sometimes it's covered more depending on where you are. You know, you could have a shooting on Wisconsin Avenue that's going to get more coverage than one on Minnesota Avenue. This shouldn't really make a difference. If someone is shot or killed, it should be covered just like it's in any other part of the city. It shouldn't be a difference made on what gets covered and what doesn't get covered. I mean, but that's just how the media is. Certain things they pick and choose to cover. However, with the Connecticut Avenue incident, that was considered a more of a mass shooting. Obviously, you got an individual that's in a building with high-powered, I believe it was a total of 9 actual weapons, and these were high-powered rifles that were also included and had been modified. Supposedly, he had a total of between 800 to 1,000 rounds. So, obviously, this could have went a lot worse than it actually did. Obviously, anytime somebody's injured, whether it's a fatality or not, it's a problem, and that's a tragedy. There was one of the individuals that I did work with during the course of my career with the Metropolitan Police Department was also shot and is in pretty serious condition. This individual hasn't been named. I haven't seen his name posted. I'm not going to name him as well. I'm just hoping that he recovers, and I'm praying for his recovery, because anytime you get shot with a high-powered rifle or any type of handgun or rifle, it's a problem. And obviously, this is a serious situation for him, and hopefully he recovers. There was a unusual, really, response. Obviously, when something like that happens, you got the whole city responding as far as law enforcement. It's normally a chaotic scene. If you are in law enforcement, it may look like it's extravagant, and it's actually a very disorganized situation in most cases, because you have various jurisdictions and agencies trying to communicate together, and nobody's on the same page. You have Metropolitan Police Department, you have in this particular case you had the ATF, you had Park Police, you had Secret Service, Homeland Security, and any other FBI or any other agency that felt that they needed to be there on that Connecticut Avenue incident. The only thing about that, with that large number of police resources, in most cases, they're not communicating together. Everybody's on a separate zone as far as our radio communication. You got one official, and a lot of times with MPD, that's relaying information that's given to him or her by the chief, and unfortunately, a lot of times, by the time it does get to the actual officers, the story has changed a couple of times. Somebody might be saying, hey, let's enter the building. Somebody is saying, no, let's set up a perimeter and keep individuals away from the building. It was a kind of weird situation to me. Of course, I wasn't there. I'm retired. I'm watching it from the television like everyone else. But I did see something that was very alarming. I saw a group of what appeared to be emergency response team in a line covering a line of children or individuals coming out of the school. And these emergency response team looked like possibly the Metropolitan Police Department's ERT or somebody's SWAT team or emergency response team, walking these individuals out. And of course, they had the long guns pointed at the building, which was kind of bizarre to me. Why would you, if you do know or have an idea that the shots are coming from a building, you guys are coming out with the children or what have you, why are you taking them out of a building? What happened to sheltering in place? You bringing them out, and you're aiming your weapons at a building, possibly where the gunshots were coming from. However, as a moving, you all are a moving target. There's no way you can get an accurate shot off just seeing a muzzle flash, because they at that point didn't know exactly where the shots were coming from. I didn't understand why they would bring them out into the into the gunfire for the most part, because obviously they had already had knowledge that several windows were shattered from gunfire from that apartment building. They had fragments from cement actually, bouncing up from the bullets that were ricocheting on the cement, and it just made no sense to me. And of course, this is somebody obviously made a decision to bring the children or individuals out of the school and wherever they were and walk them. I just made no sense. Why would you walk them in the line of fire? If you don't know where the fire is coming from, the gunfire, why would you walk them out of a building that obviously they were safe to shelter within that building? I don't understand the logic in that. With individual having those high-powered rifles and scopes, 800 between 800 to 1,000 rounds, that could have been extremely a deadly situation. He could have easily killed at least 100 individuals, including police and any law enforcement agency that was out there, because you can't get to him before he can fire those rounds off. And he had modified, it's my understanding, several of those weapons to shoot fully automatic weapon. So for the most part, all he had to do was actually aim or point the weapon at the crowd and just pull the trigger and hold the trigger until the rounds were just emptied out of the clip. And then he just load another one. If you don't have to, if it's not like, it's a fully automatic weapon, you just holding the trigger back and you're going to hit something with that kind of rifle. And it's a blessing that whoever the individual was either decided to kill himself or just panicked or just couldn't shoot, because you don't need to be able to shoot or have any type of marksmanship skill to kill individuals with that kind of high-powered rifle that's been altered to be a fully automatic rifle. It's normally would be a semi-automatic, but it's my understanding that he had altered the rifle to be fully automatic to the point where all he had to do was pull the trigger, and it's basically a machine gun, a high-powered machine gun with a scope, and he had a tripod. So this individual was prepared to do some real damage. However, for whatever reason, it wasn't done, and that is a blessing. But I don't understand. A lot of times these individuals are in these apartments, and neighbors a lot of times they have blinders on, and you probably talk to some of these people that saw this individual, and they'll probably say now, oh yeah, well, I did think he was kind of weird, and I did see him take what looked like telescope cases in and all the time. Did it ever occur to you that might be a gun case? But some people that live in these particular areas are naive to what's going on. They just look, oh, well, I just thought the guy was weird. Yeah, but you live right beside him. It just never occurred to you that this guy was just, constantly in and out by himself. I mean, you got a right to go in and out of your apartment by yourself and not have any guests or friends. If that's your lifestyle, it's your lifestyle. But it's pretty hard to get a whole rack of weapons in, and sometimes and no one sees you with anything, no bags or anything. For the most part, when you leave or coming, it's 9 times out of 10 somebody is coming and going as well. Now, there could have been something odd that someone just overlooked, or it could have been, for the most part, he could have just did this when individuals will sleep, as far as moving the weapons in and bringing bags in. 3 or 4 in the morning, you're not going to encounter a lot of people unless they're coming in from a night out, or some people work at night. And if the individuals have been out, most times they may have had a couple of drinks and they're not really paying that much attention to you either. And there's some people that will even actually hold the door for you. You got what appears to be a long gun case, and there's somebody just, hey, can you hold the door for me? You get ready to walk in there with a long gun, and they wouldn't even think nothing of it. Oh, sure, I got the door for you. Let me hold that for you. And that person thinking that it may be something like some telescope or something, unlikely to be a gun, because they're in a so-called safe neighborhood, as a lot of people did actually post, how could this happen in a safe neighborhood? How could this happen in this area of Northwest? There are people that are actually naive into believing that because you're in upper Northwest, or you're in the Gold Coast area of DC, where it's $1 million homes or things like that, that you can't experience gun violence, which is just a myth. It's just far from the truth. They have a lot of times shootings and things of that nature, but a lot of times it's so isolated, individuals overlook it and think nothing of it. It happens all over the city, but obviously you don't see it in mass shootings like what could have been on Connecticut Avenue. Now, in that particular case, I'll say it again, that was a very lucky situation that no fatalities, because the individual had everything in that apartment to really obviously commit some serious mayhem. And it's my understanding the individual had pretty much barricaded himself in there by putting a refrigerator against the door so that the police could enter. And when they got close and were ready to enter, the individual just killed himself and took his own life, which, regardless, before they could have gotten to him, he could have really, really done some damage. And he did do some damage because obviously a co-worker was shot and there was some other individuals were also hit. So any type of injury, whether it be minor or major, is an injury, and that's a problem. It's just unfortunate that they don't really know what the motive was. As far as I'm concerned, you think of terrorism, you think of people from foreign countries. You got terrorists right in the United States that are American born and what have you. So, I don't like to stereotype and put that stereotype on foreign countries or people that are not of American not of the American culture or what have you. You can have a terrorist right next door to you that's American born and what have you. They just snap and decide they're just going to shoot up a school. That's a terrorist. It doesn't matter what your ethnicity is. If you do something that's, for the most part, terrorist related, and, in my opinion, you're a terrorist. You don't have to be from another country. That's a lot of stereotypes that individuals would have you to believe that all terrorists are from another country or something like that. But this is a situation, obviously they're still investigating. It's hard to tell right now what the motive was. There were, again, about 10 shootings from Friday to Saturday all throughout the city. There was a triple shooting on Kennedy Street at the Yums, which is a known hangout for individuals who are normally all out front, which doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing anything wrong or violating any laws. But sometimes when you stand on a block and it's a group of individuals, and one individual may have a problem with another neighborhood or another individual, when they come to do the shooting or retaliate, they're not going to say, well, wait a minute, he's standing over there by so-and-so, we can't shoot at him right now. No, they're going to take the shots right then and then. If you're in that crowd, it's a good chance that you may get shot as well or may get killed. There's been numerous incidents where individuals have been killed simply, as they say, being in the wrong place at the right time, or vice versa. My thing is, how can you be in the wrong place when you're just standing on the street talking to somebody and somebody rides down the street and starts shooting? You're in a public space. You are not there illegal. You're in a legal area where you had the right to be, but then you get shot for just standing there. So it's no such thing as being at the wrong place at the wrong time in reality. You're on public space. Where were you? At what point were you there illegally? So that's just something I don't take. That doesn't sit too well with me as far as that. And 3 individuals were shot. They don't have any links, obviously, the Kennedy Street shooting to the Van Ness shooting on Connecticut Avenue. They don't believe at this time, that that's related. But there were numerous shootings throughout the city, and there always are shootings throughout the city that aren't covered. For example, if there's a shooting in another part of the city, and for the most part there's just shell casings and they don't have an actual victim, a lot of time that doesn't even get reported. It gets overlooked. Now, if they have a victim, a lot of times that victim will go to a hospital in PG County or Virginia or somewhere else where they don't really necessarily have to deal with the DC detective, because naturally our hospital is going to make the notification. Anytime there is a gunshot victim brought in, dropped off, crawled in, or what have you, you're mandated to notify the police. If there's a violent act or you think that there's a crime that's actually been committed, the hospital will make that phone call, whether it's a gunshot victim or it's a parent bringing a child in where the child has a severe laceration to the head and that looks suspect. They're going to make that notification to the police, because if they don't and something happens and that's found to be hypothetically, let's say child abuse or some form of domestic violence, the husband brings his wife in, her head is split open, and they don't notify the police. And a lot of times the wife or what have you will be already coached into, hey, whatever you do when we get in here, they ask you what happened, you say you failed. We're not getting the police involved in this. And a lot of times nurses that have been working and doctors been dealing with patients that are victims of domestic violence or child abuse can see the signs a lot of times when they bring these patients in. There's a little bit of, hey, that's not really what happened. They give you that eye. This is not really what happened. I need the police. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're so scared to reveal what happened, or the individuals in the waiting room. You tell the police, hey, no matter what, most times these individuals have nowhere else to go a lot of times, so the domestic violence will actually continue or get worse. But they do deliberately, a lot of times, gunshot victims go to other jurisdictions. And PG County, for example, is not going to call every district in DC to find out, is there a shooting here? Was there a shooting there? Was there a shooting there? It's just time consuming. Now, it doesn't take a whole lot to do that, but a lot of times PG County is just as busy as DC. I actually call it the 8th district. Maryland at one time was the place to go. If you lived in Maryland, you were kind of doing all right. But nowadays, depending on where you live in Maryland, you're just as worse off in some of the harder neighborhoods in the city of DC. So there really isn't a safe place, although you hear people, for example, a lot of times I was referring to the social media, individuals will post, and how could this happen on Connecticut Avenue? How could this happen in Upper Northwest? This is a good area. This is a so-called good area. People are brainwashed into believing that if you live in Georgetown or Foggy Bottom area, you can leave your blinds open. And most of these individuals have no curtains, because I've seen them, and they walk around a lot of times, no clothes on, things. You just naturally see these things when you ride through the neighborhood. You're like, somebody standing, is that a mannequin standing in the door? And you get close as you pass by, this individual with no clothes on just standing at the door. They staring at you, you standing at them. You just keep driving. It's like, wow, they don't believe in blinds or curtains, but a lot of individuals just feel safe up there. They don't feel like anything could happen. So they often go out of town, and you'll see papers just stacked up on the porch instead of having a neighbor retrieve these items, or mailbox a lot of times will be actually stuffed with mail coming out of the mailbox, which obviously is a sign that the individual is not home or hasn't been coming home. Now, a lot of these individuals that live in these upper areas of Northwest and what have you have vacation homes in Florida. A lot of times they go to Florida, what have you, and they don't even give thought to this house here in the city. And the next thing you know, they got a burglary, and you got the alarm and things of that nature. But what good is it if you're not anywhere to be found? And some of these things have a delay on notifying the police. And a lot of times when the police get there, we have no way to access it. So if an individual broke in and shut the door, we can't kick that door in if there's no individual in there allowing the police to enter. We just check the perimeter, and a lot of times you check the perimeter, everything's safe, nothing appears to be damaged, and the individual somehow pried the window open without breaking it, went in, closed the window, and we still get an alarm, but we can't go inside the business or place to check because there's no key holder to open the door or give us access to it. So a lot of times, maybe a week later, that same alarm that's been going off was actually burglarized, but we just had no access to it. So when that family comes home, a lot of times all of their items have already been stolen. And, sometimes they have video footage where they can actually see the video footage online and say, hey, someone's in my home, but we still have no way to get in there without breaking something down. If there's no immediate threat to someone staying there, even if they tell us, hey, please go in my house, somebody's in there, it's still not that easy to do that because we have to verify this person on the phone is actually the owner of the home. We have no types of license or identification we can visibly see. So a lot of times it doesn't happen like that, and the police are not going to kick that door in just because somebody on the other end of the phone says they own it. We need a lot of times, in most cases, more than that. But back to the shooting situation, individuals go to different parts of this city, may get shot, try to get out to Maryland and get treated because obviously you got to deal with a detective if you go to a local hospital in DC, and if it's that bad, it's not going to matter. You're going to the nearest hospital and you'll just deal with the detectives. And the detectives do come out and interview these individuals that have been shot, and in most cases they don't want to talk to the police, don't want to have anything to do with the police. I don't know who shot me. I don't even know where I was at. So a lot of times you have to almost play, hide and go seek, trying to find the crime scene because they don't even tell you where they got shot at. Now, at some point, somebody will say, "Hey, I did hear some shots out here at this location," and you get a call for that, and you get there, and then you do find shell cases. But if you don't find any blood or anything, you really don't have a whole lot to work on. And again, these individuals go to different jurisdictions like Maryland, PG County, or whatever jurisdiction is not going to call every district and see if they had a shooting, because DC has numerous shootings on a regular basis. They're just not reported, especially just the sounds of gunshots. You get a call for shots fired. You got no victim. You get there, you got about 15, 20 shell cases. Obviously, they're going to take the property and the evidence from the shooting. But if there's nobody shot, you're not going to even know about it. They don't even put that out as public information. These shootings happen pretty much a lot of times on the hour. Just random shootings. Somebody just shooting a gun off in the air. Not necessarily shooting at someone, but just popping off. And the thing is, obviously the police respond, but these happen so frequently, most of the citizens have no idea that this goes on. And it's a very troubling way to title the video, that the gun violence, the violence with the guns is just beginning. But it's true, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the Metropolitan Police Department right now is so thin as far as retirements and the lack of recruitment. No one is really going into the field of law enforcement, and they're having a hard time bringing individuals on board, because most of these individuals that have college degrees and associate degrees that are eligible, they take their skills elsewhere. Why would you want to become a police officer and be ridiculed every single day for doing your job, even when you do it right? If it's something that looks wrong, you're going to be sitting on administrative leave, pending an investigation. Sometimes it may be pending termination. Depends on how the citizens see it, or it's a very complicated position to take upon. And you also have to take into consideration that the police academy went an entire year or more without any recruits. That's impossible. Unfortunately, COVID made it possible. If you don't double the police officers that you didn't have in the academy to catch up, you'll never catch up. And of course, now I see that Muriel Bowser, mayor, is trying to add more police officers and come up and give all this money to add more law enforcement, when at first it was defunding the police department, and Charles Allen and a few other city council members jumped on board on that defund the police movement and what have you. That lasted for a minute, and now you got basically a pandemic of crime. Individuals are going into stores in DC, high-end stores, of course, and just basically snatching merchandise. Now, in this particular case, if it's not a case where there's violence used or a handgun or a knife, these individuals can basically take all these coats, jump in a stolen car, and pull right up beside the police, and there's nothing really they can do. You can't chase these individuals for property crimes. And a lot of businesses has actually went out of business because the insurance doesn't cover that kind of loss. 3 or 4 times in a month, you lost about $15,000 to $20,000 worth of merchandise because 10 or 15 individuals came in your store and just grabbed coats and ran out and jumped into a van or what have you. No, they didn't have a gun. Nobody pulled a knife or anything, but they basically just, it's crime free. And when I say crime free, DC, I don't mean like it's free of crime. I mean, it's basically you're free to commit whatever crime you want in DC and get away with it. That's sad to say, but in reality, when you see these individuals constantly on the news going in stores like mobs of 10, 15, 20 people, they have no fear of getting caught by the police. They have no fear of even actually interacting with the police, because the police can't chase you. They can't physically chase you in a vehicle as long as it wasn't a carjacking or a thing. Okay, so what? The vehicle is stolen. And even if the vehicle is stolen, if it's not in the system it's stolen, what can they do? They can't chase you. That's the lookout for the vehicle, but we are not authorized to chase. We're not giving you authorization to chase. Just get the last known direction of travel, and you will voice that over the air. Okay, vehicle last seen northbound on 22nd Street, approaching N Street, Northwest. I lost sight of the vehicle. Because you can't chase it. That's all you can do is give a lookout. Now, to that individual that owns that store that has lost about $15,000 to $30,000 of merchandise in 1 month, What do you tell the insurance company? Okay, maybe the first time they're gonna cover it, but after that, the insurance company is in the business of making money. They're not in the business of helping you. It's a business just like anything else. So obviously, you keep coming to him making claims, keep coming to making claims, and eventually they're gonna drop you or send you somewhere else. And then, of course, it's gonna be difficult to get insurance elsewhere because you have numerous claims, and a lot of times insurance companies kind of know, the ins and outs. So okay, this person files multiple claims, their premium or whatever is going to be extremely high. We're going to have to, the stuff that they've had, and they've had numerous deaths. We're going to have to set this premium, and you're not even at this point. You're not even making any money because your premiums are so high. Your loss revenue is so serious. You've lost more merchandise than you would probably make in a year. A lot of times, the way these individuals are taking coats and breaking glasses and things like that, and just taking the shades and the glasses, these high end frames. That was a thing not too long ago where they were just smashing the glasses out, taking those. And like I said, it's hard for a business to recover from something like that, and I don't see any hope for it. And as far as the crime, of course, the mayor and the chief, they always talk a good game. I think someone was just recently homicide. Somebody was just killed on Blaine Street, I believe, and it might have been 3 shootings last night. And it's just so many shootings that are actually happening that don't even make the news or not even covered. And individuals a lot of times think, well, hey, things are dying down. No, they're not. They're actually getting worse. They're just not covered. As it gets warmer, DC is going to be a pretty much a gun-toting zone. You're going to have all types of shootings. It's just beginning. And the reason I say this is because simply the Metropolitan Police Department is thin. You have numerous retirements. Everyone knows that during the spring and summer months, a lot of individuals set their retirement up for the warmer months. And you're not going to be able to replace that now. I saw the little political stunt where they had the cadets in the background of the mayor and the chief. And don't get me wrong, Chief Conte is a nice guy. I have worked with him and have nothing personally against him. But you have to ask yourself, compared to Chief Newsham, who was the chief with the Metropolitan Police Department, every year that Chief Newsham was present, the homicides went up. For whatever reason, not too many people questioned it. Not too many people made a big deal. And to me personally, I think if those homicides were happening in Upper Northwest and Georgetown, you had people getting really shot or robbed every day in that particular part of the city, there would have been some accountability question in reference to what is Chief Newsham doing. But because they were in predominantly black areas or areas of people of color, I got no problem saying it. And I'm familiar with Chief Newsham. He was the commander of the 2nd District, so I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Chief Conte, great guy, nice spirit for the most part. But on the same note, what's really changed since he's taken over as chief? Has it gotten better? Because the homicides are currently up. And at this point, as far as carjackings, that's on a whole nother level since he's taken over. And not to mention the gun violence and the robberies of the stores where they just basically shoplifting, walking in stores, taking what they want. And it's a problem. And I don't know if he can really do what he wants to do without his hands being tied by the mayor. I do know that the mayor is technically his boss, so maybe there are things he can't do, but that's just not the position to be in if you're not going to change things or put things into motion other than talking. Now, I hear prayers to the family, our condolences. That stuff goes nowhere when you got a child that's laying in the street and it's your child bleeding out, and they got that tent. I call it the homicide tent because it's a tent that they put up. Used to be where they would just had the sheets up, but they actually have a tent that covers up everything. You can't really see the body and what have you, and they working. And that body is not going anywhere until they finish processing, because the body is actually considered a part of the crime scene. It's evidence. Even though there's no signs of life, that's somebody's child, and it's hard to watch your child laying in the street, bleeding out with no signs of life, and all you got is the mayor or the chief, or if you get a press conference at all, because a lot of these cases don't get press conferences. You just got yellow tape and a dead body. Of course, and that's one of the things that I have discussed. There are different parts of the city you get killed in. you'll get a little more attention. But if you get killed in this part of the city, you don't get any attention, which makes no sense. A life should be a life, but obviously that's not the case. So this individual is bleeding out, and you got basically them processing the scene. You can't explain that to a mother, condolences and prayers to the family, and that's her child. You need a little more to that, because all you're doing is saying the same thing over and over, and it's not even remix. It's the same record. Hey, if you saw something out 727-9099, I think that's the number to the CIC, but they give that same information out every single time. The little mobile press conference where they say, hey, if you saw anything, or the chief gets mad and says this has got to come to an end and all that. And that sounds all good, but after about the 10th time of you saying that and there's no action from the police department, I mean, think about it. When was the last time you saw a traffic stop? You don't see that kind of stuff. You don't see individuals stopped on the sidewalk or none of that, because they don't want to offend anyone. And unfortunately, policing isn't pretty. You're going to have to, at some point, do some police work and get these officers out of the cars and start doing some actual work. Now, obviously, you just don't want to profile and stereotype individuals, but it's pretty common nature that some individuals are out here carrying guns. That a lot of times they don't have driver's license. They just creating all types of obvious traffic violations. You don't even see the police even entertain that anymore, because they said, for the most part, we just want to come to work and go home. We don't want to jeopardize our job. You do something, for the most part, the department is not going to back you. Even if you are legally doing something right, once it gets a little political or the mayor is not happy with what she saw, then, the chief, for the most part, can get on board and say, hey, well, maybe that wasn't right, or maybe the officer's going to handle it differently. We're going to have some in-service training and this and that. Bottom line is, face it, you don't have enough officers for the cause of service. They're not going to tell you that on the news. One crime scene or a major shooting with numerous shell cases can put a whole shift out of service, because every one of those shell cases has to be accounted for. So that means somebody has to stand by it. If a shell casing went into a door or someone's home, somebody's got to keep an eye on that shell case so no one comes out, touches, what have you. That's basically taking your whole manpower or woman power, to be politically correct, out of service. You don't have the manpower or woman power to handle the calls for service. The calls of service for crime and shootings now is outnumbering the police officers, and it's pretty obvious. And I think the chief got on there and said something about it's taking officers an additional 45 seconds or something. I don't recall, but when they actually start disclosing things on the news, and when they start telling you that they're actually short of police, it's beyond what they're telling. It's pretty much a pandemic level low. Once they start revealing it to the public, it's bad. And what they're basically doing is preparing you for the worst, because it's going to get a whole lot worse this summer, because there are no police on the street for the most part. And the ones that are on the street, for the most part, are not really doing a whole lot of proactive police. They're not doing anything but chasing the radio. When I say chasing the radio, that means they're just answering calls for service. They're not doing anything. If they see somebody obviously smoking marijuana in public space, which you're not supposed to do, they're not going to say nothing, because they don't want the confrontation. So they'll drive past or just ignore. If it's an individual that possibly looked like he might have had a gun, or as the officer drove by, he did some form of overt gesture to his waistband like he had something. Even if it is a gun, the officers are not going to fool with it, because they don't want the trouble. They don't want the nonsense that could turn out to be something else. And the next thing you know, you're on administrative leave. So obviously, looking out for yourself comes first. So a lot of times these officers aren't doing anything. You hear the mayor say she's with violence interrupters and done all this. All these activists is supposed to be involved. Well, I emailed the violence interrupters, because I wanted to see specifically, what does a violence interrupter do, and are they compensated, and how do you become one? I'm still waiting for a response. They haven't responded to me yet. So a lot of times you don't know. It sounds good when she says, I'm going to give this money, this and that. A lot of times, if you really knew where that money went, you would be almost ready to put some charges on some people, because a lot of times the money goes to individuals that, obviously are within that clique. And of course, it's not spent like you think. It's something given for this and that. And these individuals, a lot of times, are not doing for the most part anything. But they've been given money because obviously at some point they might have done something for the mayor. They might have contributed, to her campaign or what have you when she first started. And basically it revolves around people taking care of people that took care of them. Doesn't necessarily have an interest in stopping gun violence or things of that nature. It's just an unfortunate situation that I see that's going to get a whole lot worse. And there's an influx of guns that are actually entering the city that they're not even discussing. They're not even discussing that there is a supplier that's supplying ghost guns in this city. There's a pipeline. But they don't acknowledge that. They just talk about we've got to get rid of the ghost guns. Well, maybe you need to get rid of the supplier that's bringing them into the city first. Because these guns that these individuals, and I'm not referring to the incident on Connecticut Avenue, they're getting those same guns off the street from individuals depending on who they compensate these guns from. Some individuals have laser sights. These are very, very high-powered weapons that they're finding just naturally in the neighborhoods. A lot of extended clips. The extended clips have become basically the norm. And what these individuals don't really know a lot about guns, when you put an aftermarket magazine or a clip into a Glock and it's hanging like halfway out of the Glock because it's like a 50-round clip, that makes the gun heavier for one. And that's an aftermarket magazine that's not supposed to go into the Glock, meaning it's a magazine that will fit, but it's not made by Glock. So a lot of these magazines are made cheap. They jam when you fire them, and it makes the gun extremely heavy. If you got a 50-round clip in there versus maybe a 15-round clip. So obviously the gun is going to get heavy as the individual's firing. Most of the time the shots are all over the place. They're not even aiming. They're just praying and spraying, trying to hit something. And most of the time they hit everything but the target. They hit a child. They hit a baby that's in a car seat and what have you. And these situations are all over D.C. where they find that these rounds, a lot of these weapons have flashlights already mounted to them. This is not your local your local gun collectors. These are individuals that's just randomly on the street with these weapons that have no license and have no experience at even carrying a gun other than doing things illegally in most cases. My thing is, where's the question as to where these guns coming from? That's not ever asked. And where's the mandatory minimum? If you get caught with a ghost gun, in my opinion, you just need to do some mandatory time. As simple as that. You don't see individuals robbing banks on a regular basis. And the reason is that's a federal situation. They handle things totally different from your local police department and your local superior court. It's not a game when it comes down to things like that. That money is going to be protected. You go into a bank and you get caught robbing a bank, there's not going to be copping a plea to a lesser charge or getting a smack on the hand like DC Superior Court where you can just revolving door until they get tired of you and then they stick you with some time. You rob a bank, in most cases, you're going to do at least 10 years. That's just the minimum. You're going to do at least 10 years. If you somehow don't get killed in the process, because like I said, banks go to an extreme to protect their money. Now, obviously, they got no problem giving you the die pack of money or the money that a lot of times may have a chip in it that they can trace. So you don't really see individuals robbing banks on a regular. Now, it does happen, but what I'm saying is you don't hear about bank robberies in Washington, D.C. on a regular because there's a consequence and there's a price to pay when you rob a bank. It's a whole different situation from your local law enforcement and your local court. There's no making deals and things of that nature. And that's pretty much the same way it is with the other gun violence in D.C. It's totally the opposite. You can shoot somebody, and depending on how it works out, the case might not be papered. The judge might transfer the case a couple of times, meaning that it's up for trial about 15 to 20 times. And then by that time, it finally is ready for trial. Some of the witnesses have died. Some of the witnesses don't remember what happened. And for the most part, a lot of times the individual walks because there's such a backlog in criminal cases in the D.C. Superior Court, with COVID and things of that nature. They were famous for continuing cases. I benefited from it big time myself, but it was a lot of times I would have maybe sometimes 20 appearances on one case. They would just keep continuing. Now, obviously, I made money every time. It was not a problem. I would have came. If I could make money off of, I still go today if I could when I'm retired. But it's just a screwed up system, and when you really watch the system, the only people that really benefit is law enforcement and your attorneys. The attorneys a lot of times all work hand in hand with the defense attorneys and the prosecuting attorneys. They're friends. Now, that's something that it took me a while to get used to, because after being on the stand and going back and forth with this defense attorney, and I looked at the attorneys after it was over, they were all sitting together, for the most part, talking and laughing. I'm like, wait a minute, we just got off the stand. This individual was trying to cross-examine me and make it seem like I wasn't even on the scene of the crime, and now the prosecuting attorney is smiling, everybody's happy. What? It was kind of confusing to me until I recently, as I began my career, I just started to see it on a regular, and then I started to understand, oh, this isn't personal, it's just business. So everybody's cool. And then I start talking to attorneys, they'd be like, well, this judge is a no-nonsense judge, they're not going to be able to do this. Or they'd be like, well, this judge falls asleep on the stand, so you don't have to really worry about it. If he's not looking at you, he's probably asleep. And I'm like, wait a minute, these judges fall asleep? And somebody's life is on the line as far as their freedom, they're going to trial, but you'd have to see it for yourself. It does happen a lot of times. A lot of the judges are not even listening to you when you testify. So the system itself, in my opinion, at least Washington, D.C., is a complete failure. And that's, for the most part, you're going to have no accountability when it comes to gun violence. So why wouldn't individuals just go out and just basically have a whole criminal purge where you can basically just do anything? Because the police in D.C. are pretty much non-existent. And I hate to say that as being a retired police officer with Washington, D.C., but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And I'm sure some police officers or retired members might see this video and be like, oh, man, I can't believe you said that. But I'm going to call it like I said. That's the reason I left $70,000 on the table when I was asked twice at my closeout hearing would I like to come back as a senior police officer and still remain at my assigned district and do what I did. Of course, I would lose my days off, but all money is not good money. I saw this in 2019. I saw how some of the newer officers were really scary. Didn't want to put their hands on anyone, even when it was required, when you had to pull someone out of the police wagon or whatever. They said it wasn't getting into transport. They still didn't want to put their hands on anyone. You have a lot of individuals that just have no interest in really policing other than the stuff like taking reports. And sometimes it's a little more to it than that. And you're going to have to get physical. Some individuals tell you straight, I'm not going to jail. So what do? Just let him go? That's not how it goes. Policing is ugly. And trust me, it gets real ugly. And you've got law enforcement that just pretty much turned a blind eye to crime. And that's why you're getting the shootings every day. They don't mind. I mean, you hear the Ring doorbell footage of individuals posting. These are in a lot of Capitol Hill or the so-called good areas of D.C. It doesn't matter anymore. When you don't have police, it doesn't matter where you are. You're not safe because the police are not patrolling. They're robbing people for dogs. With individuals, you can't even walk your dog anymore. If you got a real nice dog, you better have a conceal and carry. And I tell individuals all the time, you might not be safe with a gun in your house, but give it thought. Read up on it. I'd rather have a gun in my house than be relying on the Metropolitan Police Department. And I'm being honest, at this time right now, I'd rather have a licensed gun and rely on myself as a citizen if I was just an average citizen. So I would tell anyone to give it thought. And you can mark my word, you can watch the news. As the weather gets warmer, the shootings and the gun violence in D.C. is going to increase to a pandemic level. I've already seen some of the shootings that are going on right now that are not even making the news. They just don't make the news. A lot of times the news doesn't even consider that worthy of covering because it's so common. Now my thing is with that, I got mixed feelings. Yes, it's common for certain areas of D.C. there to be shootings, but it's not acceptable to just allow it to take place. And then like recently, a female was in the back seat with I think her son, and she was shot and killed in front of her son by a stray bullet. Now they've made an arrest in reference to this, but what difference does it make if you got an arrest and the individual at some point may be given 10 years? When that individual completes that 10 years, he can still come, or she can still come home and do something with their life. That child's mother that got shot in his presence while he was in the car will never be the same. When you shoot somebody or you do something reckless like that, everybody pays a price. Now, somebody's going to try to have to be there for that child, which will never be 100% right. Not to mention, whatever that mom responsibilities had, she might have been taking care of her mother. She might have been taking care of some siblings. You basically just robbed this child of his mom. And in my opinion, you should be held accountable. Whatever you make in commissary or what have you, or you're in debt to that child for the rest of your life, you need to pay child support since you chose to take his mother in a reckless manner. And a lot of times when you talk to some of the individuals that are in law enforcement that work these homicide cases, a lot of these shootings are so petty and revolve around simple things like he dissed me in a video. Now, mind you, some of these individuals, obviously none of them have recording contracts with a major label, and if they did, it still would make sense. So you shot dude because he dissed Barry Farms, and I'm just saying hypothetically, he dissed Barry Farms in a rap video. So y'all decide y'all can go over there and shoot up the neighborhood, the ones that did this video. I don't get it. You won't complete college a lot of times. A lot of them don't want to go to a school to further their education or try to get some skills so they can be in the work environment or even work for themselves. But you'll do a crime that will require you probably 5 to 10 years. You'll do 10 years in jail, but you won't do 4 years in a learning institution. Doesn't make sense to me. But there is no accountability. And that's why I say it's going to get a whole lot worse. Metropolitan Police Department is basically running on fumes, and there's no let up. They're talking about adding more officers. It's come on. You can't even get officers to even, for the most part, coming to the academy. It's my understanding that a lot of officers or recruits that they had possibly for Metropolitan Police Department just declined because the vaccine mandate. So a lot of individuals were not really comfortable taking the vaccine, and that's another topic that I think is your body, your choice. I don't think you should do anything or be forced to do anything, including taking the vaccine if that's not something you want to do. Last time I checked, it's your body, it's your choice, and everything doesn't work for everybody. There are some individuals, obviously, that can't drink milk. So obviously we can't force everyone to drink milk. Some people are just not tolerant to it. So it's your body, it's your choice. That's just my opinion. I won't go too far into that because I know that gets a lot of people feathers ruffled. A lot of people very sensitive to that. But my thing is, your body, your choice. You know what I'm saying? Nobody should be forcing you to do anything. And it's unfortunate that a lot of times individuals have had to do it because of jobs and what have you. But that, in my opinion, shouldn't be the case. And the thing with the guns is, you'll see the Metropolitan Police Department often put up 40 guns recovered. And that sounds good and looks good when they do the political pep rally and show all the pictures of the guns. But my question is, I always asked individuals, if you ever have a question and answer session, how many arrests came with these guns? How many cases were papered? And when I say papered, what I mean is how many cases were actually prosecuted. Meaning, if an attorney says it's papered, that means they're going to go with prosecuting and attempt to get a verdict, a guilty verdict or what have you. But a lot of times these cases are not papered. If an attorney decides to say, well, this is not going to be papered, that means that the case in their opinion is not winnable for trial purposes, or a lot of times the officer didn't include enough of the facts in the narrative that support the crime. It just didn't make sense from the attorney's perspective. And a lot of times this falls on the officer that doesn't know how to properly write or create a narrative that supports the crime that's actually been committed. Obviously, if you're not specifically detailing what really happened, an attorney can't read that narrative and say, okay, now see what happened. Case is not going to be papered. If you don't have probable cause, you just happen to walk up to an individual and say, okay, we saw these individuals in a high crime area known for gun violence, so we decided to search them. Doesn't work like that. Although plenty of police officers do it, and no, nothing has really changed since George Floyd. The same individuals are in these police academies, and a lot of times they're coming out into these urban neighborhoods. They have never experienced or dealt with individuals, and they don't know how to interact with individuals other than pulling a gun or use of force. There are a lot of individuals that just don't know. The police academy, in my opinion, and I'm speaking on DC because I can't speak on all of them, it's so watered down. There's so many things they don't teach you in the police academy. For the most part, our in-service training before I left was the same thing over and over. They never went into different things as far as how to deal with hostile individuals, how to deal with individuals in the neighborhood, excuse me, that don't necessarily like the police, and have some individuals from these neighborhoods come in and speak to police and tell the police, hey, like, we don't like when y'all come in the neighborhood and do this. Have some interaction. They never brought the citizens into the police academies to have a dialogue. How can you have a individual working in the neighborhood that's not from the neighborhood, doesn't live anywhere near the neighborhood? We had individuals in my district that actually came to work every day from across the Bay Bridge, and a couple of them lived past King's Dominion. So to each his own. But a lot of these individuals have no type of interest in what's going on in your neighborhood. We work here for 8 hours or now it's 10 hours a day. Once we leave, we leave. And when we here, we're going to treat these citizens like prisoners, and it's us against them mentality. Not all police officers think like that, but a lot of them do. And that's why you have the relationships a lot of times are off, because the officers don't know how to talk. They don't know how to communicate. You can actually make a relationship with someone without having that us against them mentality. If you just talk to them with respect, and a lot of officers are not trained to talk with respect in the police academy. They don't teach you that. They don't teach you that. And if people can trust you or relate to you, and you're not just gung-ho 24/7 in these neighborhoods, you get a whole lot done in a more easier fashion versus just going and just trying to stop everybody, or just, for the most part, put your foot down in the neighborhood. People don't like that. And if you just are straight and fair with individuals, you can get a lot accomplished. But I don't see it happening. I see a lot of lack of training. A lot of officers don't know what they're doing. They're rushing to get a lot of the, not the recruits, but more or less the cadets into these positions, because there's a low numbers. And a lot of these guys are coming out of school and they're not mature enough to do that. And the ones that are actually a lot of times quit right after they get on the street, after they see what they got to deal with. Because obviously they paint a picture of the police being on the recruiting sites as it just being so much fun, and you're going to be on a boat, you're going to be on the police boat, you're going to be with the harbor branch, or maybe you'll be in the helicopter branch, and you're going to do this. You're not going to do none of that stuff when you first get there. And even if you do get to that point where you can move to one of those specialized units, that's for the most part is who you know. Type of situations. It's not based on your skills in most cases, it's based on who you know. You can be as skillful for the position, but if one person, for example, in Harbor Branch doesn't like you or had a run-in with you, 9 times out of 10, you're not going over there. It's not based on merit or your actual skill. It's a who's who department. Now, I have no problem saying that. That's a fact. They publicize and perpetrate that fraud that you're going to be doing. You're going to be working a lot of crazy hours. For the most part, dependent, you're not going to get ample rest if you don't really know how to work the system, meaning not necessarily get over, but have enough common sense to know you can't just drive all night long without stopping, getting yourself together if you've been in court for 10 hours. And then you got to work that midnight shift. And no, you're not going to be able to take off every night if you work a night shift and you had to go to court. That's just not how it goes. Court is part of the game. You're not going to get sleep some people are going to be asleep and you're going to still be at work. If an incident happens like Connecticut Avenue, if that happens before you get off, you're not going home. So whatever plans you had to pick the baby up, you got to have a plan B. Doesn't work like that. And right now, again, police department is extremely thin, and it's not just DC, PG County as well. You can't put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. And that's basically what the mayor's trying to do in DC. It's too late to replace all these officers that have left. And once you start seeing the chief start speaking about the numbers, it's really a grave situation, because they don't normally tell you or speak on things like this unless it's actually getting ready to hit it's about to overflow as far as crime. And it is. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about as the weather warms up as far as these shootings. And I would like to think that it's not going to be the only one, but there's going to be many. And there's going to be some shootings in the so-called good areas of D.C. I hate to say that for those that are in the good areas of D.C. and the areas that seem so safe, like Connecticut Avenue, there are going to be more shootings because for the most part, there are a lot of illegal guns, there are a lot of ghost guns in this city, and for the most part, crime is pretty much traveling all over the city. Now, there were times when individuals in Capitol Hill didn't think they would get carjacked. You had individuals down at the stadium, the National Stadium, didn't think they would have problems coming out of the game. When you walk on these side streets, a lot of times after you had about 4 or 5 of those beers in the baseball game, you're not really aware of your surroundings. When you walk to that car, somebody's already watching you. And by the time you get ready to open that door, they pop up out of nowhere, almost like a magic trick, because you weren't paying attention because you had a few drinks. So now you got a gun in your face. You're getting carjacked. How could this happen right a block away from National Stadium? You weren't paying attention. Crime is traveling like cancer all over the city, and there are no police to fight it for the most part. And you can see it because you're getting people that are actually being robbed in areas where in the 90s you just didn't really see that. Crime for the most part was boxed in. There were certain areas even the criminals didn't come to commit a crime because you knew it would be a good chance you would be getting caught. Not anymore. For the most part, it's everywhere. You can't even walk a really nice breed dog without somebody eyeing you and taking your dog at gunpoint. Now, my thing is, why would you take a dog at gunpoint and risk your freedom? And in most cases, if an individual has a very serious breed animal, that animal has a chip in it already. So in case that pet gets lost, they can locate the pet. Now, no one is actually thinking about being robbed of their pet when they get that chip in them. Obviously, you're thinking if the dog runs away, but now you have to worry about somebody putting a gun in your face for your animal. Not your car, your animal. What are you going to really do with an animal that you take? You're going to try to sell it? You're going to put it on eBay? You know, and like I said, it didn't take long to find the dog. And I don't know if they found the other dog, but that just goes to show you where we are as far as crime in this city. You can't even walk a dog. And just like the chief was outraged when some of the incidents happened pertaining to the police supposedly misconduct, he should have the same outrage with the city being basically run amok with crime. You know, I see him, it's always the same speech. You got the 5 cronies or the rest of the guys from the command staff behind him, and they say the same thing. Condolences to the family, prayers, and if you see some, say some, 727-9099, etc. The BS gets old. And like I said, I know Chief Conti, but obviously when you are in an occupation that obviously things go downhill, they will give you a time to turn it around. But even the Redskins, or whatever they're calling their Washington's team, had enough sense that if you don't produce, you got to go as a coach. We need somebody that can come in here and turn this around. And obviously, Pete Newsham couldn't do it. The homicides went up every year. Chief Conti's in. And honestly, you got to ask yourself, is it better or worse? Now you're getting kids caught with stray bullets. Baby was killed, I think it was at Southern Avenue. Maybe that was last year. Bullet went through the car seat, killed the baby. Where's the outrage for that? I don't see any types of mandates or, hey, well, we're going to be doing this. This is so-and-so overtime. We're going to have police here actually doing work. Just having police sitting in the car means absolutely nothing, because that particular triple shooting on Kennedy Street, there's normally a police car that sits right in that block. But for the most part, they know you just sitting there. They know you're not going to do anything. And for the most part, the police department, and I got no problem saying it's so weak now that I wouldn't be surprised if some of the individuals on Kennedy Street told the police, look, I don't mean no harm, officer, but y'all got to move. You park right here. We can't smoke in public. We can't do nothing that we normally do. And we'd appreciate it if y'all leave, because if not, we're going to find a call and make a complaint that your car is simply harassing us by being here. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually entertained it, because right now, the police not doing anything. Anytime you can just drive down Kennedy Street, you see the police cars parked, and you just smell nothing but weed. Now, obviously, weed is legal, but it's not legal on public space. Now, you know, I got my mixed feelings on the whole legal, illegal, but come on now. Where's the respect? You just gonna stand out there and smoke in the same block where the officers' cars parked on the detail at like 9th and Kennedy or whatever. They don't care. I ride down the block, smell the stench of marijuana like it's just a straight party. And the police don't do anything, you know. So I'm going to tell you, I'm being honest with you. It's a very, I really didn't want to put this video out, but I do know the numbers of the police department right now, and it's actually going to grow lower as far as man or woman power. It's going to grow thinner because they have a lot of retirements for spring and summer that are already set. People are leaving. They had no intentions on leaving with the whole COVID and the hours, you know, for the most part. You know, they have mandatory overtime that you got to work now, because every time you look, there's some type of protest going on. And, you know, even with the Connecticut Avenue incident, they pretty much used the whole Metropolitan Police Department for that, as far as to create a perimeter. I still don't understand the individuals that walk those children out into the line of gunfire. If this individual obviously had a high-powered rifle and had already wounded individuals from where he was, why would you walk the kids out and aim your rifles up into the sky at the building, knowing you weren't going to be able to do anything if he started firing? In my opinion, they walked those kids to their deaths, but it didn't go down like that, and I'm thankful. But that individual with 800 to 1,000 rounds and those rifles I saw with those high-powered scopes, he could have killed at least 100 individuals, along with as many officers, before they actually got to him, because it would have took some time to get into the apartment of where he was. And also, you got to get through that gunfire, since he's obviously modified those weapons to shoot fully automatic. That just didn't go right, but I'm thankful whoever made that decision to walk those kids out, that the individual hopefully had already killed himself, so that that threat was over. But that just wasn't there was no logic in walking kids out after the individual was shooting down at the ground. You walking those kids to their death or their grave for the most part. But again, I wasn't there. I do know for a fact in large incidents like that, no one knows what they're doing, and you're getting 1,000 different transmissions on the radio. Everybody's on a different radio zone. It's just absolute madness. But training that I've had, you know, the active shooter training, you don't walk individuals out like that if you know that there's a shooter at a higher level that's still active. You don't do that. And I don't know who made that call, but fortunately it didn't go to the left. Someone obviously was shot, one of my coworkers, and hopefully, like I said, he pulls through and recovers. But it's going to get a lot worse, and I'm not just saying this in the rougher areas, the rougher so-called areas of the city. You're going to have some more shootings like the one on Connecticut Avenue in the so-called good areas. I don't want to see it happen, but it's going to happen. And honestly, I don't see anything actually changing unless, and I hate to say this, unless there's an officer shot in the line of duty or something like that. That's the only thing that I see that would actually change the Metropolitan Police Department's attitude and drive toward crime until you see one of those individuals get shot. And I'm not saying in a fatal way. I wouldn't want to see no officer get shot. But it just doesn't seem like they're doing anything. It's the same speech every time somebody's killed that the chief gives. The mayor sometimes may come, depending on where it is. Because certain areas, if somebody gets killed, the mayor's not showing up. Simple as that. You can say what you want to say. I'm familiar with it. I was invited personally, myself and my wife, to a ghost gun meeting when her son was killed. And it was more of a political type stunt, in my opinion. This is my opinion. We did go to the ghost gun meeting, and at that time, Chief Newsham was the chief, and Chief Conti was the assistant chief. And I spoke to them after, and I told them, in that particular incident, there's very lucky that an officer wasn't coming up the street, and when this individual fired these rounds and killed my wife's child, but they kind of blew it off, and the chief said, well, if you need something, let us know. I never heard from him again. Now, I wasn't expecting to hear from Chief Newsham because I didn't actually know him like that, but I actually did work with Chief Conti. He was a sergeant at my district, what have you. He told me to call him if I need anything. Obviously, I don't need too much for the most part, but never got a follow-up call. Now, mind you, he knew that was my stepchild, which is my wife's son, Raheem Murray, that was killed, but I never got a call from him. So, obviously, it is what it is, but it just goes to show you still can know individuals, and it doesn't mean that you're going to get the support that you think. Now, I didn't need anything, but it wouldn't have bothered me if he had just called and said, hey, man, I was just calling to see how your wife is making out or how you're making out in reference to the homicide. I didn't get none of that, and it's okay. But that happens, and that's something I'm going to do a video on death, because a lot of times certain people you think that will actually be there for you, or maybe just call you to see, hey, how you doing or whatever, they don't call. And it's some people that you don't expect to get a phone call from at all that actually reach out to you. And that's a whole different topic. But again, I didn't get no call. And like I said, he knew for a fact that was my folks. Now, after the ghost gun pep rally, I call it, where the mayor had invited us to, she looked my way and I looked at her. We made eye contact, and I just listened to the speech that they put out. I listened to the show and tell, because they had all the ghost guns, I guess from evidence control that they had recovered. I don't know if they were actually pending trial or what have you, but they showed the ghost guns for the media. And right after that was over, I was able to speak to Chief Conti and Assistant Chief Conti at the time and Chief Newsham, but the mayor never acknowledged me or my wife. Now, my wife, more than anything, I would have thought she would acknowledge her, because her child was actually killed. That was the reason that we were invited, because her son was a victim of a homicide. And the mayor just looked and left like she was the president of the United States. Her entourage followed her, and one of her cronies did speak with my wife. But it just goes to show you, like I said, it was all a political stunt. I know the politics of the game, and but my wife was like, why didn't she come over here? I said, what's this politics? She just needed people to be here. And there were other victims of gun violence there as well, but the mayor didn't take the time to greet anyone or say, hey, I'm sorry, my condolences, or what have you. I'm thanking you that you guys did come out and be here. If there's anything we can do for you, please let us know. Even if you don't have any intentions on doing anything. But she didn't BS anything. She left and didn't say anything to any of the other victims, which, it's not surprising when you have people in political positions that have no, they have no, They have no ties to the city. You can, go to school in the area. It's my understanding the mayor went to Seton, which is a private girls' school that my daughter attended to as well. And sometimes people don't always have a relationship with individuals in the city, or they have a relationship with certain people in the city but not others. Now, I found that, this is just my opinion, somebody else might disagree, and that's okay. I've seen the mayor attend events or go to certain areas of upper Northwest and certain areas, but for some reason I don't see her really go across the bridge to the southeast side and just see those individuals. Maybe it's me, maybe I missed her at some of those events, but I don't even see her acknowledging some of the things that go on over there. I just don't. Obviously if a child is hit, she'll show up, and you can see the attitude in her face a lot of times that she doesn't really want to be there, but it's politically correct as far as the right thing to do being there. But if you start to ask her questions, the attitude comes. You can pretty much see it. If you're not talking statehood toward Muriel Bowers, he's just not really nothing stimulating. Now, if it's revenue or something like that, I just saw on the news earlier with Pharrell, with an individual from the Neptunes that has produced a lot of musical artists. He's going to be doing a function or a festival in D.C. Nancy's in his face. Took him to Baloo and all that stuff. And for the most part, that's because there's revenue involved. Anytime it's money involved or something pertaining to statehood, the mayor's all grinning, all teeth. But talk about something in relation to individuals that are prisoners of their own homes in certain areas of D.C. that might not be as affluent as Foggy Bottom or Georgetown, you're not going to see her. You're not going to hear her. But let something go down in Georgetown or something like that, you'll see her on the news or standing behind the chief. My thing is, like I said, I got a problem when you discriminate on where you go and you don't show up in certain areas, but you show up in others quicker when everybody deserves the same treatment. Everybody, for the most part, voted one way or another. So why are you catering to this particular part of Northwest and not catering to this particular part of Southeast? Nobody's saying cater to one more than the other, but give everybody an equal treatment. Don't just pop up when something kick off on Connecticut Avenue. They find some individuals in the days in a triple shooting. You're there for that. You're there to answer questions, but then child's mom gets killed driving down the street, and all you got is one official, and not even the chief speaking on it or something. It's a problem with that. It's a problem. And I wanted to discuss this. Somebody had sent me a question in reference to the commander, Fitzgerald, I believe, the one that, if you caught on the news, that he was supposedly using the scout car to drop him off at bars or what have you and things like that. They said on the news that he was fined $5,000 in reference to the incident. What happened was he's getting ready to retire. And because this is not a criminal investigation, it's basically administrative. Obviously, there's some form of investigation as far as wrongdoing on his part as abusing his powers. That's not a criminal situation. What he did is, and you can do this in situations that don't pertain to criminal accusations. You can pay $5,000 if you're getting ready to retire and be done with the investigation and just retire. Now, I know to a lot of people watching or listening, that sounds crazy, but yes, you can do it. I could have did it myself. If I was on the investigation when I got ready to retire for something that I did that wasn't criminal, but it was administrative, like I did something crazy, like say I was just constantly passing red lights every night in the scout car and all that and all the tickets and what have you. But I don't want to be investigated. I just want to walk. I can pay the $5,000 and walk. And that's what he did. He wasn't fined $5,000. He just paid the $5,000 to just walk away with a clean slate, which, is it right? Is it wrong? I mean, I got mixed feelings on it, obviously. I don't think you should be able to just pay your way and walk, but the department is a money-hungry department. If they can get $5,000 and you can walk, obviously. And obviously, like I said, this individual, Fitzgerald, he did some things. I'm not really familiar with the history of it all, but that's my understanding, and what's been floating around is there wasn't the media. It was a captain or someone within the Metropolitan Police Department was trying to get his position that started making notifications that he was using the scout car. So it was something within house of the police department, and you get a lot of crabs in a barrel type mentality with top officials. Somebody felt like they should have had his position, so they found his weakness. They know after his shift he would get dropped off, go to the bar, have a couple of drinks or what have you. And from what I understand, the official that was trying to get to his position is the one that dropped it down, which doesn't surprise me. The media is good, but the media is just not going to randomly pick out Commander Fitzgerald to follow around. Somebody within the police department did that, and it's not something that's necessarily right, but it's something that's a common practice. I've seen Chief Ramsey in certain establishments when we knew, the chief was around. We'd see the Cruiser One parked in front of a steakhouse on K Street. We knew, okay, let's get away from here. Last thing we want to do is ride past and they flag us down to get us to do something or take a report, or can we handle this? Because that's what most top officials do. If they see you, they'll flag you down and pass you some work. So whenever we saw Cruiser 1, that means that the chief is somewhere around. And we saw Cruiser 1 in all types of restaurants, and trust me, in most cases they were drinking or doing whatever as well. But we didn't get involved. That's chief of police. We got other fish to fry, and we're not trying to create no nonsense for ourselves. So we would just leave the area. But it's not an uncommon practice to get dropped off at locations. It's been going on for years. When I had a older female captain, that we had to take turns dropping her off at the Foggy Bottom Metro every single night. Nobody wanted to do it. Who wants to ride with the captain? Because you're on pins and needles. You're thinking, okay, I got to use turn signal, I got to do this. Because you're thinking she's paying attention to your every move. And it's not like that. She just wants to be dropped off at the Metro. But we did it every single night for years, and nobody said a thing. What you going to do? Tell the captain, hey, look, you need to have your own car. It's not our responsibility to take you to the Metro. Or you going to do it. And it's the same with a so-called situation like Commander Fitzgerald. If he tells you to drop me off here, you're not going to say, well, God, Commander Fitzgerald, that just don't feel right. I can't do this. No, you're going to take him to whatever bar, and if he calls on the radio and says, can you have Scout Car so-and-so respond to location to transport me to the 2nd District, guess what? You're going to transport him to the 2nd District. Now, of course, you can, if you feel that it's wrong, or if you feel like something is unbecoming, is conduct unbecoming on his behalf, you can drop a dime to somebody. But if you do, there's 9 times out of 10 it's going to be a consequence, because there's no secrets on the police department. Everybody knows what everybody does. Obviously, if there's a situation where you go to a high-ranking official, a lot of times that high-ranking official will tell the commander, like, look, Officer so-and-so came and said that you're drinking on duty. And next thing you know, they're both in the same clip, and now they're going to burn you up. Every night you're going to have a hospital detail, or you're going to have some screwed up assignment that you don't want for the remainder of your career until one of them gets promoted, or till both of them leave. So, it's a chance to take if you want to go that route where you just want to politically do the right thing, but in most cases, it's consequences when you do that. Just like with your job, any type of working job, obviously you might have a supervisor that's doing some things wrong, but you got to take into consideration, is it really worth me going to this level and bringing this to a upper supervisor's attention? Sometimes you got to pick and choose your battles. It's as simple as that. It's just as simple as that. But look, I'm going to get ready to go. I'm going to leave that on everyone's mind. The gun violence is just beginning. It's not going to change. It's going to get a whole lot worse. You'll see what I'm saying if you watch just what goes on during the warmer months as it gets warmer. And I'm going to tell you this before it happens. The shooting on Connecticut Avenue in the so-called good area, or the area that this can't happen in, as some people actually posted, there's going to be another shooting in one of those neighborhoods. Trust me, I'm not looking forward. I'm not necessarily anticipating it. I'm just being brutally honest. There's going to be another shooting in Northwest, in the so-called good area. It's going to happen because the gun population of weapons that's in this city right now is unreal. They're not going to tell you that. It's not going to be on the news. However, the police department is paper thin. There's not a lot of officers on the street to actually take the calls for service. The calls of service from citizens is actually outnumbering the officers. That's why the chief mentioned something about a delay in response time. Because a lot of times a call will go out and they won't have an actual officer to respond to the call. So it is a problem. It's something that's just beginning. As you see the weather get warmer, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But subscribe, share, and tell somebody. There wasn't a situation, and like I said, I don't know if I brought this up, and then I'm gonna let you go. The carjacking video had a female from Texas submit to me that she had watched the video and happened to go to a gas station in Texas. There was a vehicle, and I had talked about this during the carjacking video, with tinted windows. No one was getting gas. The vehicle just parked at the pump. So she thought that was suspicious after she had saw the carjacking video. She drove to another gas station that was, no individuals, looked suspicious. Got home that night, that particular gas station she was at with the vehicle that was parked with tinted windows, that gas station's mini mart was robbed, and that was the same lookout of the car given, and the individuals inside were pretty shaken up. Of course, their wallets and cell phones were taken, but what the individuals were doing, waiting for a least amount of customers inside the mini mart before they robbed. They were waiting for customers to leave out, and she didn't go in. She just ended up going to another location to get gas. But they did rob the mini mart, and they robbed the citizens inside of the mini mart of their wallets and their cell phones. So watching the video, she actually avoided being robbed by going to another location. So every video I do is not going to be something that you can necessarily learn anything from or apply, or maybe, it'll be another one. But that made me feel pretty good to at least know that somebody avoided being a victim by going to another gas station because they saw a vehicle parked at the pump, and there were people in the vehicle, tinted windows, but nobody got out to do anything. So she just took it upon herself and said, well, after watching that video, that didn't look right. And come to find out, her instincts were right. And Mini Mart was robbed at a gas station, and she would have likely been one of the victims if she had been in there when they pulled the guns out when they ran inside, because they took everybody's cell phones and everybody's wallet that was inside, along with obviously robbing the establishment. But keep your eyes open, be aware of your surroundings, and I'll be doing some other videos coming up. I want to do something on the video. I want to do something in reference to tires and rims being stolen. That's another thing that's plaguing the city. I just rode past the street not too long ago, and that vehicle was on yellow crates. And all the tires and wheels have been taken in. That's another situation that the police could actually could do something about, but they're not actually patrolling anymore. For the most part, when you're stealing tires and rims off a vehicle, that's normally happening 2 and 3 in the morning, late at night, and you're not driving a Toyota Corolla when you're taking tires and rims. Most of these individuals are doing this with pickup trucks and vans. So obviously, you got a truck riding around 3 in the morning in neighborhoods. Obviously, it's no crime to be in a neighborhood 2 to 3 in the morning, but if you get behind a vehicle long enough just to follow the vehicle, they're going to actually commit some form of traffic violation, and you can pull them over. We did it all the time, and obviously that's a form of not necessarily profiling. We're just more or less watching, because it's a situation. If it's 3 in the morning and you got a pickup truck riding through the neighborhood and they got the lights off, something's going on. Obviously that individual maybe didn't know their lights were off, but obviously from that point on, that's enough to justify a traffic stop. When the individuals are doing this, it's pretty easy to catch them. They stand out. It's only them for the most part on the road, and to get 4 tires off of a vehicle, obviously in most cases the vehicles don't have wheel locks on their tires. And like I said, that's something that I'll get into on another video. But the gun violence is just getting ready to start in DC. It's just beginning, and I hate to say it, it hasn't started yet, and it's going to occur again in the so-called good area of Northwest or good area of DC, whatever that means. Because in my opinion, the only good area in DC is in your mind. That's your imagination. Obviously, the individuals that were victims on Connecticut Avenue no longer think, and I know the parents don't, no longer think Connecticut Avenue is a nice part of town. Obviously, if you got shot with a high-powered rifle, there's nothing nice about Connecticut Avenue. And this can happen anywhere. And that's just what I'm trying to get people to realize, is you don't have to be in upper Northwest to, for the most part, live safe. You can also get shot there. It's not a safe area. You don't have to be in a so-called part of the city to get robbed. You can get robbed in Georgetown. But sometimes individuals don't believe this. They have on blindness, and they just think that, hey, I'm safe here. Obviously not. And it's going to get a lot worse. And I hate to keep saying that, but it's the truth. And the thing is, unfortunately, in my opinion, I don't see anything happening unless one of MPD's own gets shot, or there's something tragic like that happens. Because obviously, there was a baby that was killed, shot through the car seat. The young kid that played football that was killed with a stray bullet. With all that being done, you don't see the chief or MPD doing anything drastic. It's the same story. It's the same lack of police officers. There's no plan put into effect. Nothing. I've just seen talk. I've heard talk. So I don't know what else could possibly happen. You got a kid a baby that was killed, shot through a car seat, and you still haven't taken any action as far as to put a clamp or at least appear to be doing something about crime. All I hear is condolences and prayers to the family. And if you see some, dial 727-9099. I believe that's the number to the SOC or CIC. You know, if you got a tip in reference to a crime that's going on. But I don't see anything happening until, unfortunately, something tragic like that happens. Then all of a sudden, there'll be a turnaround. But it shouldn't take that. Obviously, if you see the city basically being the victim of a crime pandemic as a chief, or you should do something. Because if you can't do anything, what's the point of even taking a position? Because how can you even furthermore leave and go somewhere else? First thing they're going to say, well, what did you do when you were the chief in D.C.? Man, say it was worse when you was the chief than when Newsom. So how can we hire you and think you're going to turn our county around? You know, interesting scenario. And like I said, it's different strokes for different folks. And accountability is everything. And my thing is, regardless, if you are not productive and you're not doing the job, or as mayor, the city is worse than it was, maybe it's time for a change. It's called accountability. If you can't get a grip on this crime, something needs to happen. Somebody needs to go. You know, there was a time, obviously, when I was in policing, you couldn't come to check off, meaning you couldn't leave without turning in some tickets or moving violations. You had to have something that you had done throughout that day on your shift. These sergeants did not play. Now, they're a little different now. All the officers nowadays are so sensitive, so you can't really talk to them like some of the sergeants talk. We literally got cursed out. Now, it wasn't professional. It wasn't necessarily the right thing to do, but it made you a tougher, more proficient person. You knew you couldn't come to the checkoff window and just turn in an empty run sheet, meaning you didn't do nothing while you patrolling. You didn't stop anybody. You didn't conduct any traffic stops. You didn't do anything. But different department now. Today, you can just do a push-up challenge or a dance-off or anything that's politically cool versus doing your job. They'd rather see you cooking for senior citizens, and there's nothing wrong with the community-based policing, but what good is doing a push-up challenge and dancing with a bunch of kids on a TikTok video, and these same kids can't even go out without being shot or catching a stray bullet, but the manpower or woman power, to be politically correct, is in some senior citizen facility cooking for seniors. And that's cool. You can do that once you get a grip on crime. But right now, crime should be the top priority versus making things appear that they're something that they're not. Because most of these individuals are in these classes or teaching these citizens how to cook or doing something more community related. It's just to get out of doing work. A lot of these individuals don't have that love for the community, and a lot of them are not even from the community. But that's a whole nother story. Keep your eyes open. The gun violence is going to get worse. Sorry to say that, but I'm privileged to know a few things as far as the paper thin numbers within the Metropolitan Police Department, and it's not going to get any better. Share, subscribe, and I'm gone.